Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host Greg Tompsett, and tonight I am joined by my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how we doing?
I'm doing all right, man. How you doing?
Good. I mean, there's nothing else going on in our country or anywhere else around us. So I'm sure everyone is solely focused on this Buffalo Bills Seattle Seahawks game.
Honestly, lots of stress out there in the world. On a personal note, unfortunately, some people saw we had put my dog down here this week at our house. So sad, but it kind of want to take a moment to talk about how important it is in 2020 to have sports back, man. I've been looking forward to this all day with the stuff with my dog, with all the other stuff in the world going on. To be able to be midweek, come back, talk to you, get ready for this game, and know there's some normalcy. And I think we get caught up in the arguing of trade deadlines and if Trent Murphy sucks or not. But to have that normalcy of sports, I think is so important to so many people that it's really good that it's back and that the NFL has been able to stay going. I just kind of had that thought today of like how important this little bit of normalcy that we still have and that we're all clinging on to in 2020 is so important to so many people. So glad to be here talking with you and glad the Bills are playing this weekend, man.
No, absolutely. It really well said. And obviously tough for you and your family with young kids. That's tough to be able to explain the loss of a close pet. So certainly thinking about you guys. But I agree. It is kind of nice to get away from it. I can only refresh my phone or switch between the 4 rotating news channels that I watch every minute that I'm not working. Just trying to find out what's going on next. So it's nice to get away. It was nice to, force myself to prep for the show, like to actually get away from it and to go, watch a couple of Seahawks games, research some of their setup, figure out where the injury reports are. It was kind of fun to be able to get my mind back into that rhythm. And like you said, some normalcy is good. So tonight's show obviously is presented by our sponsor, Uncle Jumbo. Love the guys over there. Appreciate all their support and everything they do to help present the show and everything that we get to do alongside you guys. And looking forward to being able to talk a little bit about some of the segments here today. Before we kind of dive into the Seahawks matchup, I know going back and looking our T-shirt University fresh look of the day, Ike Bacher was my fresh look, and going back and looking at that Patriots game, I was certainly part of the Bills Mafia echo chamber on Twitter going back and forth where, hey, Ryan Bates looked good at first, and then they brought in Ike Bacher, and hey, what are you guys doing? You guys are idiots. And I went back and looked. He was pretty good. I was pleasantly surprised. He looked better than I remembered in real time. And I honestly didn't see that many bad plays at all, let alone a string of them.
Yeah, and that's a tough thing about, every post-game show I try to stay away from offensive line because it's so hard to get a look. And Joe Thomas, you brought it up on a show a couple of weeks ago, talked about like sometimes it's not seeing stuff that means a guy's had a good week. And I think some people maybe right after the game said, hey, they thought they saw some stuff bad from Bacher, but he played so many more snaps as well. So it's even if he did have some bad plays, like that's going to happen with these guys at the lower end here of the depth chart. But PFF, and I have problems with PFF grades. I know a lot of people have problems with PFF grades. But if we're going to all go out on a limb and say, hey, the Bills are a bunch of morons for trading Wyatt Teller because he had 4 good PFF grade games, I don't know how many people have actually sat and watched Wyatt Teller tape. But I think we're judging off of what other people are telling us. Then I think we have to give some of that same credence to when one of our guys low on the depth chart does have that good of a game. And 3 more of these games, and we got our own Wyatt Teller back. But so a good sign from Bacher. I don't know that he'll play to that level continuously, but I think that he's earning the right to compete if he continues to.
Yeah, and I think that all we're really looking for is, can he be not bad enough to sink us between now and getting to the point to where we can get, Deion Dawkins, Cody Ford, Mitch Morse, John Feliciano, Darrell Williams, and get that offensive line settled and ready to go for a stretch run. And, some encouraging reports. I know we saw Mitch Morse out at the practice field. They were pretty cautious with Micah Hyde last week. Yeah. We talked about how it's pretty rare for a player to fully clear concussion protocol all at once.
And he's still in protocol
today. Correct. So going through that process is not automatic by any means. So being able to set it up that we're able to see him at least out there, and we were very cautious not to speculate recklessly, but that the worst case scenario of, hey, do we ever see him on a practice field again, which we said was not likely, but was in the range of possible outcomes. Seeing him out there on the practice field immediately for the first practice is a very reassuring sign for me personally.
Yeah, he's not closed off in a dark room somewhere.
Correct. And that, well, honestly, when you get to that level of that many concussions and that kind of thing, could you blame him if that's the kind of discussion he was having with his family? So just the fact that he felt comfortable, his wife felt comfortable, their family felt comfortable that, hey, I'm going to be out there with my teammates because this is what I still want to do. And that he felt from a safety standpoint, from a health standpoint, he's ready to do that. That at least gives me reassurance we're going to see him again this season. And then we'll take everything else from there. So I still would say, letting him take it easy for this Seahawks and Cardinals game to get through the bye and give him 28 days with no football seems pretty logical to me. So that's where I come with Ike Bacher and that T-shirt University fresh look, going back and looking at him. I'm hopeful he can get us 2 games. I'm hopeful he can get us almost 3, since honestly Morris went out very early in that Patriots game. So if he can get us 3 games and 2 more here where we can survive, I don't mind giving Cody Ford through there to come all the way back. And then you talk about it, if we can get through there after, this 9th and 10th game, then you're still talking about a bye week and then a 6-game run going into the playoffs. If we can get all 5 offensive linemen healthy for a 6-game run going into the playoffs, I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, and there's a couple other scenarios too, right? Like, say Morse just needs the week of concussion protocol, and they do have him come back, because I do think this coaching staff, every game does matter. I'm not sure what's up with Ford, so that could be one of those ones, like you said, that goes after the bye week. And at this point, they might just let him go till after the bye week. I think there's a scenario where, as long as Bacher continues to play better than Brian Winters, that's a huge improvement when we move Feliciano back.
How crazy it is to even say that, like, hey, maybe he's better than Brian Winters.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's not so crazy this year, but that's really all we're looking for, right? Like, we have, when Morris is back and Feliciano's back at guard, there's a weak link in the offensive line at the other guard spot. And even when Cody Ford comes back, there's still a weak link. He hasn't shown anything that he's going to shore that part of the lineup. So who's going to be the guy that plays the best at that weak link? Because I'm not sure it's going to be a Wyatt Teller. I was kind of teasing there with the 3 games with Wyatt Teller. We're not going to get a Wyatt Teller out of nowhere here, but it's trying to find who's going to be the least vulnerable part of that offensive line, like you said, to get that last stretch of 6 games and then into the playoffs, because this run game looked pretty good here this last week with Bacher, and we need more of that here as football gets colder. Playoffs slow down a little bit. I'm not saying go fully to the run, but when we're in that 60-40 range, the run game needs to be more effective like it was here this weekend. And so that guard, we need to shore up a little bit. So I think that's a good fresh look that you picked. I think it's going to be something that we're going to benefit from having a chance to get another look at here this week and see if it's just a one-time performance or if it's something that is that he can repeat and play at that level more than once in a season.
Yeah, obviously the proof will be in the pudding when we see everything on the field and where that's coming from.
And they're saying here, Ford was at practice.
Yeah, he was out there on the practice field. So obviously, coming from the point of, I saw the film breakdown that Kyle Trimble, anybody who's not following, Banged Up Bills, check him out. The mechanism that it looked like and how he got snapped back over sideways with the guy rolling into his leg, it looked bad. And then he got carted off the field. Right. You put those 2 things together. I saw him bend sideways. I saw his reaction. I saw him get carted off the field. I assumed the season was done. I just assumed that was it. So
like 10 texts of people being like, his ACL's gone.
Yeah. I mean, we all watch football all the time. Obviously, everybody jumps to conclusions like crazy, but that wasn't a crazy one. That wasn't some enormous reach. I thought we had lost him. So being able to now be like, oh, well, maybe he's going to be back for 7 games to go, and he might only miss 2 or 3 weeks. That's pretty crazy to be able to go through there. So being able to patch it together, and I'll bring it back to that comment I love from Joe Thomas, is that Ike Bacher can be that guy who he's probably not going to have a ton of highlights. He's probably not going to have a ton of pancakes and, powerful, blocks that Eric likes to show on the, with the Feliciano's fun for the highlight end of it. But if he just doesn't have the bottom end, if he just doesn't have those crazy whiffs and doesn't get destroyed and can just be functional, below average, just barely good enough, that works. We can make that work for this stretch.
Yeah, and whether or not he starts in any type of scenario here, we've seen along this stretch Cody Ford's injury, getting a concussion. Like, these things are going to happen, and I'm not going to be convinced that we're not going to have more injuries on the offensive line. So any type of reps for these kind of guys that are at the bottom of the depth chart, it's a good thing. And when they put good tape out there, it makes you feel better that come a pinch, 4 or 5 weeks from now, you need somebody to come in and play, that they can play at a level that's acceptable. And that's really all you need to get by. So good for him to put that tape out there. Good for him to build that confidence, because I think that he's had some bad tape in the past. We've seen that he's not played to the level that he played here this past Sunday. So that's another step for him and gaining some confidence in doing it against another NFL team. So happy for him and happy for the Bills, because that really, I think a lot of people are upset that Wyatt Teller looks great. We kept these other guys that don't look so great. I'm not saying the trade was a win or not, but I'm saying if the depth can be fine, I'm not mad about it. I'm not kicking stones all over the place about that trade. If it's good depth and we have guys that can come in and play in the NFL.
Yeah. So obviously we spend a lot of time on Quentin Spain, and the names like Wyatt Teller have come up, and all of that is exasperated if we have terrible guard play. And this past week was acceptable guard play. So that's a step in the right direction. We'll take it. We're talking about Cody Ford. I'm going to ramble through the rest of the injury list for a minute. Aaron, you can go, take a nap or something. It's going to take me a while to go through these. Yeah. So Josh Allen was listed.
He's been listed. What's going on with that, man?
I think like Tom Brady had a stretch where he was listed on the injury report for like 45 consecutive games.
Right.
So if it's just gamesmanship, that's fine. Whatever. But he's technically on there. John Brown did not practice. I think that's still just kind of letting him ease back in. He did play this past game. I don't think there was a re-aggravation, but he's on there and didn't practice. Vernon Butler was limited. He didn't play last time. Cody Ford was limited, as our man here said in the chat, he was out there. So that's certainly a step in the right direction. A limited participant is better than not practicing. Our normal, Jake Fromm weirdness with his, them hiding him away in a bunker somewhere. Jerry Hughes was a DNP. I'm going to interpret that as veteran rest day. Micah Hyde still concussion, but limited, which I think technically is a step in the right direction. Quentin Jefferson limited. Daryl Johnson did not practice. Tywan Jones did not practice. Matt Milano did not practice. And the reason I said the step in the right direction for Micah Hyde is Mitch Morris concussion did not practice. So they were at different levels between the two of them. Josh Norman hamstring did not practice. I think that's understood. Brian Winters with a knee was limited. TJ Yeldon did not practice. So as I just rambled through those 16 names on the Bills injury report, all the things that, came through from last year's awesome injury luck where we were really fortunate. I'm still going to knock on wood. We have not had devastating season-ending injuries, but we have more than made up for it in the soft tissue short-term list, and now having 16 players on the injury list is just devastating to this point. So I can't imagine a team needing the bye week more than the Bills need this bye.
Yeah, they're going to need it. I think a few things here. One, the Bills are very conservative here traditionally with injuries. So I think a lot of this stuff, and it was something we talked about last week. The list was long last week too. And I think we said something like, we bet 5 of these 8 guys are going to be a go. And by Friday, we saw that kind of starting to play out.
I think I put an over under a 7.5 and was guessing. It ended up at 7. So there were 13 names on the list. 7 of them played. So I think if we went by that same ratio here, it's probably likely 8 of those 16 guys are going to play. That kind of ballpark.
Yeah, and at this point, even if guys aren't on the injury list, you're 8 games going into your 9th game of the season. Everybody's got something. I don't care who you are. You're icing up. You're getting treatments. Everybody's got some kind of lingering thing. So I think they're cautious with a lot of these injuries. I think that, like you said, none of them are here appear to be long term. Josh Norman's is, I would kind of say long term, since he hasn't really been able to play and sort of re-aggravated it. But outside of that, we haven't seen anything be long term. It's going to continue to happen. And I think there's a lot of frustration in the fan base that, as this trade line approached here, about how there's holes in the roster. And I'll tell you, there's holes in every roster ever of all time in the history of sports, not just football. Every roster is not perfect. But one thing I think they've done a good job at, for the most part here, is building depth. So when you run into an injury like this one week, we saw Dane Jackson step up in his first game ever and play really well. We saw Cam Lewis step up and had some mistakes, but played pretty well considering, where he was coming from to play. So I think they have good depth, even though it's not household name. Justin Zimmer, fumble king. It's true though. We've seen guys step up. Ike Bacher, as we were just talking about. So the depth is there. It's not always going to be sexy names, or it's going to be guys that are flawed and can be exposed, but it's guys that can come in a pinch when a guy's injured and just needs a week or needs 2 weeks here to just get through that process. And yes, we want to get healthy, but it's really good to have this depth. And that's why you got to keep those draft picks that Brandon Beane held onto here through the trade line to continue to build in that depth, because you can't just be too top heavy, because injuries happen and then things fall apart.
Well, and you look at last year, I think some people saw it as like some magic force field that we had that prevented injuries. And really, we saw with the crazy list of surgeries that happened immediately after the season, really, we were probably more on the cutting edge of managing injuries and helping guys work through it to still be able to play. Not that we had some magic force field preventing them from happening. They might have been above average or a little ahead of the curve of some teams on how they helped guys kind of fight through it and manage through it, that maybe somebody else would have kind of just thrown in the towel, said, no, we're going to end the season. You saw some pretty serious surgeries from Feliciano, from Cody Ford, from Jerry Hughes, multiple guys needing to go in and get fixed up, that, maybe there was something to that. And maybe that's what we're seeing here, is that they're able to, be, like you said, conservative, careful. They'd rather give up 2 games than give up the rest of the season. They'd rather give a guy an extra week before they get to that next spot. So if that's what it takes to be able to keep this band-aided along, just get us to the bye week, I'll take it.
Yeah, and luck's real.
Yeah,
too. Like,
that
is baked into some of this. They had a good run. I mean, because there's nothing really you can do necessarily with like Norman and a hamstring. Like, you can treat it and hope that it gets better, but if it does, everybody's different. If it doesn't get better, you can't force him out there. You can't just kind of play through something like that. So some of it's a little bit of luck, but it seems like they've done a good job managing it. Whatever happened to Levi Wallace, which we still don't really know what that injury was, but his like ankle out of nowhere, and then he was back 3 weeks. He was on the IR and he's back and he's playing, and he played fine here this past week. So they've done a good job, I think, of managing injuries. So I'm not super worried yet, even though that list is long. I think a majority of those guys will probably be a go here come Sunday. And I think that list is going to continue to look like that here for most of the season, as they stay conservative with injuries and not overwork guys during the week to ramp them up for Sunday.
As we start to pivot over and get ready for the Seahawks, I'll ramble through a little bit of theirs. They're not immune from it either. So they had 12 guys on the injury report, and 8 of them were starters. So guys that did not practice: running back Chris Carson, tight end Greg Olson, guard Mike Iupati, their nickel corner Quentin Dunbar, their starting left tackle Dwayne Brown, defensive end Benson Mawaya, and Shaq Griffin. So, and those were all did not practice. Jamal Adams was a limited participant with a groin injury. He's actually missed several games coming into here. So maybe not quite as long as the Bills list, but they're right up there as well. And every team is struggling with this right now. So like you said, it's no one's immune to it. Everyone has holes in their defense and or holes in their roster, and we'll figure out where those things fall. Speaking of which, let's dive right in to our friends here with the Seattle Seahawks and the team that we're going up against. And, as we look at it, I think we're going to see a shootout. I think we're going to see nice weather. I think we're going to see 2 teams that can move the ball. We'll get to the Seattle offense in a minute, which is terrifying in itself. But when you talk terrifying, maybe on the other end, I think a team that Bills fans only see once every 4 years, maybe you pay attention to the fantasy side of it, it's probably easy to just assume that, well, that they still have the Legion of Boom. And I can't lie, when I started researching this and looking at it, it was a whole lot of Legion of who, because I didn't know any of the guys in their secondary, and they are giving up an unbelievable 368 yards per game passing. The only thing better than their offense is what their defense is giving up. It's unbelievable in where this team is. So this certainly should be, you talk about the get right game of playing the Jets overall. This should be the get right game for this Bills offense, because if you can't get right against this pass defense, there's no getting right.
Yeah, and the weather's not going to be a factor, although I don't know that it was a huge factor last week. I think we'll get to it a little bit more. The game plan was more a factor in his performance last week. But yeah, it's definitely an opportunity to get right. I think there a little bit is baked into, I'm not going to say that it's a good pass defense, but I think some of it's baked into Seattle's been in a lot of shootouts, right? So teams are throwing to try to get back in games or to keep up in games with this whole, new offense that we've seen out of Seattle, which we haven't seen. This is a totally different Seattle team. So if you are somebody that's paid attention to Seattle from a distance over the past few years, they never really the saying is let Russ cook, right? They've never really had this type of potent passing attack where they're just kind of going out and saying, hey, we're going to almost take that Kansas City Chiefs approach where we're just going to go kind of let the ball loose in the air and we're going to outscore you. And that's our path to victory. So a lot of teams are playing kind of that keep up style and playing to what Seattle wants to do. So that's going to hurt your pass defense some.
And plenty of garbage time. They've been winning a ton of these games by a lot of points. Yeah. And then, that always turns every other offense into catch-up mode. So I know there's some noise in there, but the DVOA backs it up too.
But it doesn't look good.
It's not good either way.
Yeah, and my concern here for the Bills and the idea of a shootout, and I tweeted out something about this. Somebody had tagged a bunch of us in a question. I forget who it was, and talking about this game. I think it was your buddy Dusty there. And my biggest concern in a shootout really is a month ago, if you told me the Bills got to get in a shootout to win a game, I feel good. Almost a coin flip or better that this Bills team can go and let's get in a shootout and see who gets the last possession. Here now, 8 weeks in, and with this kind of struggles that we've seen on offense, it's not so much that I think the offense is totally regressed. It's a consistency thing, right? Hurting themselves, penalties, interceptions, whatever it is, they seem to always kind of stall out almost on their own. I don't know that it's ever really an impact of the other team. It's been, self-inflicted things and them stalling out. And you can't afford to do that with the way Seattle's offense is playing. If it's going to be great, I think the Bills are going to be able to put up points and put up some of these explosive splash plays, but you have to do it for 4 quarters. You really have to continue to move the ball, score when opportunities are available. And I think that's my biggest concern going up against this defense is not them stopping us, but the Bills stopping themselves with the self-inflicted stuff, because you can't really afford to have too many hiccups and allow that team to come back out and Russ to do work, because that's how they get out to that lead. And I don't know if they jump out to a 10-point lead or more, I don't know that the Bills have it in them to not shoot themselves in the foot enough to come back from that.
Yeah, and Keith brings up a good point here that there's still, even though it's not the depth that they used to have, it's not the elite talent at every spot that they used to have, there's still some elite talents on this defense. Bobby Wagner is still a phenomenal player. Jamal Adams
might be the best middle linebacker talent-wise still in football.
Absolutely. It's certainly in the discussion, regardless of exactly where he ranks. Jamal Adams is, he's not some ball-hawking center fielder, but he's still a menace in the box and can bring crazy pressure. He's great at blitzing and probably a nightmare, scenario for that spy role for Josh Allen. If they're going to send 3 and have him be that rover and then drop other guys into coverage, he can be really good at that. You still have guys like KJ Wright, you still have pieces that can play. Trey Flowers is back there in the secondary. There's pieces. Quandre Diggs is still a solid player. There's still pieces. They're not playing great together. But there's guys who can make individual plays. And that's what they're doing basically, is that they're going all out, crazy aggressive blitzes, all kinds of different things, because all you got to do is get one extra possession. If you flip one of those possessions with this offense, you did enough to be able to now let them outscore you. And it doesn't matter if you gave up 400 yards passing, we still scored more points and we win. And that's all that they're trying to do. So we need to be able to, identify, can we be consistent with how we approach this team to not give them those big plays? Because you're going to need to score. Can you also convert in the red zone? Because you have to score touchdowns. You're not going to beat this team with 18 points and 6 field goals. You're not going to beat this team by having 8 field goal attempts. You have to score touchdowns to beat the Seahawks. And this defense is going to allow it. You just have to make sure not to give them any ammo to keep them in that end of the game.
Yeah, it's got to be a consistency approach to it. I don't even need the big, huge splash plays. If it's working the ball down the field, that's going to do it. It just has to be not shooting yourself in the foot. So playing clean football. We've seen penalties kind of get a little bit annoyingly out of hand at times here, and just in bad spots too. It's not so much that it's the number of penalties. It's hurting yourself in the red zone and playing behind the schedule. I don't think that the Bills are still good enough to really get behind schedule and continue to do it at a high rate and get first downs at a high rate. And then some of the sloppy stuff we've seen. So Josh, I thought, did a lot better job with that here this past week, even in limited amount of throws. I think he's done a better job of not doing the sugar high Josh crazy stuff here this year, but it's there. It's on film, and there's some miscommunication stuff and bad plays, and you really got to tighten all that up here if you want a shot at winning this game. Just like you said, you can't give them free possessions. You can't give them any additional possessions, and you got to try to match them point for point. And the last 4 weeks, I haven't seen enough to indicate to me that if it's going to get into a shootout, that I feel confident that the Bills can do it so consistently to keep up point for point, and that it's going to come down to whoever has the last possession.
Well, and as we kind of take a look at what this is going to be, I don't think it changes the fact that it's a shootout, but could it be interesting if a piece of this game plan is what we saw in the first real explosion from Zack Moss? So our Uncle Jumbo's player spotlight is going to be Zack Moss tonight. And I know I was pretty encouraged with all the things that we knew were out there from a pre-draft standpoint, and with the film work that came in, him coming out, the great view, his vision, his contact balance, his ability to get small in the hole and explode through those pieces that we saw. This was the most encouraging outing that I've seen so far, to be like, hey, maybe we really do have something here. And it was really exciting. I know you talked about what we wanted Frank Gore to be. He kind of had some of that young Frank Gore to him, in that always falling forward, fighting for the extra yard. And I know Ron just brought up, you highlighted it here, maybe that is part of the game plan of what we're going to see against this poor Seahawks defense. Is maybe they can't get us off the field, and if we're having those 12, 15 play drives, then their offense doesn't have the ball.
Yeah, I really love what we saw here from Zack Moss this past week. And then I really felt it was almost similar to Devin Singletary, although lacking the explosive plays of. I felt the reps were good in super limited touches here really early in the season, but I saw positive things in those reps, and then he got hurt. And then he's off the field for a few weeks. And I felt like the trajectory was heading in this direction here, of all he needs is to kind of build up and get a game where he gets the reps. And then we'll start to see exactly what we all thought we would see first thing to start the season. And I think now we're seeing it, and that's great. And I hope he continues on this trajectory. I caution a little bit. I think time of possession is an overrated idea. And I think a lot of people think control the clock, and if we have the time of possession at the end of the game. But I do think there is something to keeping Russell Wilson off the field. But that's a hard way to win a game. It goes back to super consistent play. If you're going to play that game where you're going to say, hey, we're going to put together long sustained drives and run the ball 5-6 yards a clip, it opens up for more penalties. It opens up for more mistakes. It opens up for playing behind the chain. So you even have to execute at a higher level in order to do that. So I do think it's got to be a mix. There definitely has to be some balance in here. I don't think it's going to be like the first 4 weeks where we just see this team totally let loose on the passing, even though I think it's invited here a little bit by the Seattle defense. And when you look at DVOA, they're 6th in rushing defense. So that tells you that, they're not the easiest team to run on, but I do think with Feliciano back, there's still got to be opportunities. They got to strike that balance. And even if it's just a drive or two where you are keeping Russ off the field and you are going down and scoring on a nice, long, sustained, dominant style drive, that's got to be part of the game plan. It's got to be baked into it, right?
Well, even if it's scenario driven, say there's 6 minutes left in the half and we have the ball, maybe that's the time we're like, hey, it'd be awful nice not to give them the ball back here. And let's see if we could drain 5.5 of these minutes off the clock. That's the kind of thing that I'd like to see, is where they have the choice. Now, I don't want to see it where it's not taking shots deep, but I'd love to have it set up where they can be selective and that they're trying to be able to control the game, manage what's happening, and then take shots when they're there. Right. When it opens up and you see a break in coverage, and there's been plenty of blown coverages here with the Seahawks, when you see it, take advantage. You take a shot. I know Josh is the kind of guy who's going to do that, but don't have that be the sole point of the game plan is, hey, we're just going to come out here and outgun these guys no matter what, because they still have guys who are going to make plays. They're going to throw some exotic blitzes at us. They're going to try to trick Josh, and we can't fall into that. We need to control that, stay ahead of it, keep on schedule, keep a positive game script, make them have to catch up and stay ahead of it, because if they start to get out there and then you get sugar high Josh and he makes a mistake and has a turnover and then they score again and now they're up 2 scores, then it doesn't become a matter of course we can score on their defense, but can we stop them from scoring and catch up when they're so good offensively?
Yeah, and I want to put you on the spot here a little bit when we're talking about running backs, because I don't think it's going to be what was it? They split 14 and 14 carries.
It was almost identical.
Yeah, each. I don't think we're going to see that a lot this year. I don't think we'll see each of them get 14 carries very much. I was a firm believer here at the start of the year that Zack Moss would eventually take over, not as a running back one. I don't think they have that here, but I think he would take over and be the guy that they lean on a little bit more. Maybe he would take 55% of the touches, 60% of the touches, and lead the team in rushing touchdowns. I'm not sure if we're starting to get to the point in the season where that transition happens or not. How do you see this backfield starting to play out here now that he's back healthy? And Devin did some nice things. You know, we're not talking about him here a lot this week, but he had some nice runs. He showed some good things that we've seen here from him last year. How does the coaching staff kind of handle these 2 young, potentially really good backs?
So I was right with you in that I could see the scenario. I thought it would be game script and game plan driven, where we'd see some of those. And I would have thought we would have seen it maybe 2 weeks ago with the Jets game, that would have been a game that would have been one that logically would make sense, that I could see Moss taking it. And now the last couple games, we have seen 10 touches to 10 touches, 15 touches to 15 touches. It's been consistent. So I'm going to assume that they're going to keep up with that it's going to be alternating drives, maybe a little creativity. We saw them on the field together for the first time. That was interesting to see. I don't expect to see a lot of that, but I like it that it gets sprinkled in. I like that we've seen both of them used in the pass game. And we talked about that coming in after the draft. Was one of our favorite things was it wasn't the obvious, Frank Gore, Lee Smith, and Patrick DeMarco are coming on the field. I wonder what they're going to do. It was that, these guys both have similar skill sets. They can both catch the ball out of the backfield. They can both take it wide and do one cut. They can both go up the middle. I like that we're seeing that now, and they're just alternating it by drive to keep them fresh. So I'm going to guess that it stays pretty darn close to 50-50, but that can also tilt that if one guy has a better drive than the other, all of a sudden I could easily see Moss having a game where he has more. I'm going to be surprised if that's driven by, hey, Brian Daboll, I want to get Moss more touches this game. I think it's going to stay closer to 50-50.
Yeah, I think it will. Again, game plan dependent and situationally dependent, depending on, we just talked about it. You have that type of drive, and if they're splitting reps and drives, maybe you get a rep where it just Moss is the hot hand on that drive and he ends up with 60%. But I think at the end of the year, I think it will be a pretty even split here between the 2 backs. Hopefully they both stay healthy, because I do really like this idea of a balanced attack. I know everyone wants this modern offense, but even when they were doing kind of the modern offense thing, we still saw games of 60-40. And I think that's where you and I have been here for years of saying that's kind of where that I think the sweet spot is for this Brian Daboll offense would be a 60-40 balanced offense, where you have the production that meets what we saw here this last week, and maybe not the amount of touches, but when you do have the touches, that they're productive.
Yeah. So as we kind of switch back over and take a look at what we're going to expect coming into this team in what is just a ridiculous offense thus far, the Seahawks offense against the Bills defense, what are they not good at? I think that some people assume that it's all passing, and they're actually pretty decent rushing the ball. From a raw yardage standpoint, 3rd in passing, 12th in running. From a DVOA standpoint, 3rd in passing, 8th in rushing, number 1 in DVOA offense, number 1 in points scored and scoring offense. These guys are just a juggernaut, and that whether it's Chris Carson or Carlos Hyde or DJ Dallas, they have enough of a running game to keep you honest. And then when you put Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf out on each side, it's literally pick your poison. And each of those guys have had insane, just destructive games, both of them having 12 catch, 160 yard, 3 touchdown kind of games that just destroy an opponent.
Yeah, and they're both the kind of guys that drive me nuts about the way our cornerbacks are.
Yes.
That I don't know that I love Trey White. I do think he can hang with anybody. There's going to be some vulnerabilities to these wide receivers in his game. He's been burnt over the top before. I think there's not a guy in the world, I don't think, that can physically match DK Metcalf in a jump ball or scenario or any type of physical scenario. So that terrifies me. Real quick, I want to point out, I'm wrong all the time. Almost every day I say something stupid that's wrong, but I don't know if I've ever been so wrong in a draft scenario or a draft prospect than I was in DK Metcalf. I was pounding the table against him for the Bills, and not that I'm not mad the Bills don't have him on the roster, but I couldn't have been more wrong.
Yeah, him available at 64, every single team in the NFL would redo that and would take him.
Yeah, but totally wrong on that. He terrifies me, but I do think you're right, because in my mentions has been, well, they can't rush at all, and I don't. That's not true. They can rush
pretty good, 125 yards a game.
Yeah, and there's an added element to it which scares me a little bit, and it's not going to be big explosive plays. You won't get a lot of touchdowns out of it, but it will be when I think the Bills are going to try to sell out.
3.
Yeah, they're going to sell out in coverage, I think, a little bit, and try to slow down this passing game. And Russ is going to have some openings, and he's a smart quarterback. He can just pick up 8 yards at a time and slide. And we've seen it here in Buffalo for a number of times. Whenever you have a smart mobile quarterback that can do that and just continues to move the chains, that's the thing that doesn't always show up sexy in the stat sheet, but that at the end of the game, he's got 35, 40 yards, and he picked up 4 first downs along the ways and kept the sticks moving. That type of stuff hurts too. So there really isn't a weakness to the way they play. And I think the Bills' strategy for this is exactly what you said the Seahawks strategy is to a little bit get aggressive and just hope that you get your hands on a ball, get a fumble out, punch a ball out, get your hands on an interception, get an opportunity. But I think it's a little bit the opposite with the Bills. I think it's how many possessions can you get for Josh Allen, because we are going to slip up where there is going to be inconsistency. So you're going to need to get added possessions just to stay in this game.
So I could also see maybe that Kansas City approach. So when you played Kansas City, it's not identical, but I'm almost going to compare it to Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, that containing Tyler Lockett is going to take a ton of bracket. It's going to take a ton of center field, visibility to keep an eye on it. And then your goal with Kelce was just to keep him in front of you and make a tackle. So obviously DK Metcalf is a different animal, but just, that kind of dual threat idea, I'm going to compare a little bit.
Sure.
And they were able to at least have a game plan for that. And their game plan was send 3, have one guy spy the quarterback, and drop the other 7 every single play, sometimes drop all 8, depending on whether that third spy blitzed or stayed back in coverage. I think that's a lot of what we're going to see. I think it's going to be sending 3, one guy spies Russ, you drop 7 with bracket coverage, because the one thing you do have is there's a pretty significant drop off after Lockett and Metcalf. They have other guys, DJ or Moore is a player. They have a handful of different pieces, that they've been able to pull together. But David Moore, Greg Olsen, Will Dissly, Freddie Swain, those are not guys who are striking fear into a lot of defenses. So if you're going to isolate that, even if you have bracket on both of the other guys and you have two guys paying attention to lock it into Metcalf, you can probably make it work and isolate it. And even if that means a guy one-on-one with DJ Dallas out of the backfield or with David Moore coming out of, another guy in single coverage, I'll take that. I'll take that chance versus what it is. So I have a feeling we're going to see some similarities to that Kansas City game. I have a feeling some fans are going to get frustrated with the rushing defense because it's going to look like they're playing terrible rush defense when really they're actually having 5 and 6 man boxes to invite the run and to keep everything in front of them and not let them get beat over the top with those ridiculous Russell Wilson moonshot balls. I could see some similarities to that Kansas City game, and that the difference is the Seahawks defense is significantly worse than the Chiefs defense, and that we hopefully can just outscore them with trying to just keep everything in front of us on defense.
Yeah, I agree that we'll see some similarities of attempting to contain that, but there is some differences in the players that we're talking about. And I'm not sure that you can contain it from the explosive play level along the whole game. I just don't know if you can. And that's even inviting the run. They're a much better run team, at least going into the game, than Kansas City was. And Kansas City played fantastic in the run game in that game against the Bills. But that is still a dangerous game, especially if your offense has hiccups, because yes, they invited the run in Kansas City, but Kansas City still put up points. And I would love it if we walk away from this game where Seattle's only putting up 20-something points and not getting over the 30 mark. Because that's, in my opinion, that's the only way you really have a chance in this game, is whoever gets the 31st can win if you're containing some of that. So I think there will be some of that on there, but I mean, that's also now on tape for the Bills. So there's only so many times you can go back to that well. But I do think you're right in that we're going to see that type of bracket coverage, inviting the run some and try to, again, get our hands on some of these balls when they go out. But the problem is, yeah, these other guys might not beat you, but Russ is so accurate and he's so smart. There's not going to be like confusing him within his own defenses, and he's going to get the ball in spots and continue to move the chain. So even if you invite the pass, I think that he can still do enough to continue to move chains and get points. And it might be settling for field goals instead of touchdowns, which I'll take. But I don't know that you can limit them or invite them in the same way that we saw Andy Reid willing to just take the run the whole time. I think they're still going to let Russ cook, even if you do that. And he's going to find stuff. He's going to find mismatches with AJ Klein. He's going to find Taron Johnson over the middle. You know what I mean? They are going to find these weaknesses. Russ is just, he's at another level than anybody else in the world right now. And that's, in my opinion, more than Patrick Mahomes is playing at that level. So I don't know. It's really, it's the old cliche in sports of you just try to hope to contain them. And I think that's the game plan.
Well, it's something where fans are like, oh my gosh, just got 14 touchdown passes to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, 7 each. He's got 12 touchdown passes to other players. So, they've certainly found a way. He's almost averaging 2 touchdowns a game to other people not named DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. So there's no chance to be able to stop them. Like you said, yeah, you really are cliche just trying to contain him. But I wouldn't mind to see him mix it up. I'd like to see them keeping it in front of them, and then all of a sudden send a blitz, having, over and over again. Yeah, double A gap lined up, dropping back, double A gap lined up, dropping back, double A gap lined up. This time you go, try to keep them off balance, not let them know what's coming. Maybe they can find some kind of happy medium there to be able to do it. So, All right, it's time that we finally put ourselves on the spot here. We'll get down to our friends over at West Her being able to get down. If you're in the market looking for a vehicle, eventually you're going to have to go in and find that discussion. It's time to talk numbers. Where do you think we're going to see this game come out?
I've never had this one as a win since the schedule came out and we had to do predictions. And the Seahawks it's a weird team because I think the defense is worse than I thought they would be, but the offense is way better than I anticipated the Seahawks team being.
I expected them to be similar teams, to be completely honest.
Yes, and I just had it as okay, this is I'm gonna have them as 16-0 if I don't pick somebody that they're gonna lose to. So I picked the Seahawks, but now I think it's legitimate when I'm looking at this game. I think there's paths to victory. I really do. I don't think there's a team that the Bills can't beat in the NFL. So I'm not defeatist in that way that there's no path to victory here. There's a bunch of paths to victory for the Bills, and some of the stuff we talked about tonight, but I've got it 31-28. Again, I think this might be the game where the first to 30 wins it. I think both teams are going to have opportunities to score. I just do think the Bills offense is going to have too many of these self-inflicted hiccups until I see them not do that, until I see, clean football from a penalty standpoint, clean football from just good, clean drives that don't require penalties to keep the ball moving, or, a big shot here and there to keep things going. I just can't rely on them consistently to get in a shootout with a team like the Seahawks, and unless they get a number of possessions more than that team, outscore them. So if the defense can somehow get Josh more possessions than Russ gets, I think that's a path to victory. But if it's even possessions and we don't get any turnovers and play consistent, I just don't think we can keep pace, unfortunately. And Vegas, they're pretty good at what they do. And that's right around where I think their line is, right? What are they at? 3.5 for the Seahawks?
I've seen fluctuating between 2.5 and 3.5, which on the road means that, they're calling this a 5-6 point favorite from the Seahawks.
Yeah. So makes sense to me, man. How about you?
Yeah, I'm in the same ballpark. I keep going back and forth. I really want to pick the Bills, and honestly, short of seeing the injury list get even worse, I might have gone out on a limb and said it. I think they absolutely can win. I think they can outscore this team. Russell Wilson is playing at an MVP level we haven't seen. And for 6 out of their 7 games, he's been the reason that they've won, and we're one of the last remaining undefeated teams. You saw some chinks in the armor in that Cardinals game, that he did make a couple throws. Like you said, he's not always just going to take what the defense is giving him. He's going to take his shots either way. If the Bills can be ready for that and can pounce on those, Wilson had 2 ugly turnovers late in that Cardinals game that he hadn't done that all year. He had been nearly flawless up to that point. If we had, Bills Mafia there going crazy, trying to, get some extra noise in his ear and a full healthy roster, I would feel pretty good about a West Coast team coming east at a 1 p.m. kickoff, and really challenging them. They haven't had a lot of time off. I'd feel better about it. I'm right in that same range. I actually do think we see a genuine shootout. I'm thinking 38-35, and I do think Seattle gets us 38-35. I think that just Russell Wilson is the MVP of the NFL right now and playing at such a high level. I'd love to see him force a couple and to have Trey White. I hope we get Micah Hyde back. That'd make me feel a little bit better. But right now, with all the guys we have in that injury list, I'm just ready to get to the bye week. And, they're so good in the division right now, so good, with their positioning going forward. I want to split these 2 games, but I just don't know if we're going to get one right now. So I'll be pleasantly surprised. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm going to pick Seahawks 38-35.
Yeah, and I think last year I felt like every single week we talked about this is a must win. This is a must win every single week, and they were still had the same record, but it was always a must win because we were behind the Patriots, right? So we had to play for that wild card spot. I think the nice thing about building up a little bit of a buffer here early in the season with some of these wins is this is not a must win. I want the win. The Bills want the win. They're going to say it's a must win all week long. It's not. You can afford to drop this game, and there's a chance you win it. But if you don't, it's not the end of the world. The season's not down the drain. You've got a buffer on these other teams in the division. You're still up there in the AFC. Total, you're 4-0 in division and 5-2 in the AFC. Your playoffs are looking fantastic. Get to the bye, get healthy, make a nice run here in those last 6 games, whether it's winning the last 4 in a row or 5 in a row. Get on a run, get healthy when you need to. These next 2 weeks are going to be tough against some high potent offenses. So yeah, if you can split going into the bye, fantastic. It even buys you more of a buffer that you don't even need. But right now they're a little bit playing with house money, so a loss is not the end of the world right now, as long as it's not a painful blowout where the Bills just look terrible and the end score is like that Titans game and then Twitter's burning for the next couple of weeks. If it's a competitive game against a Super Bowl contender, a legitimate Super Bowl contender right now from the other conference, that is what I want to see. I want to see us go toe to toe with a team like that, and they don't have to win. And I know I'm going to get killed for there's no moral victories, Aaron. But there is, and it's a showcase of, hey, we can go into the play. Everyone's saying, hey, Sean McDermott can't beat these good teams. But if you go to toe to toe with the guy that's the MVP right now, playing at an unreal level, and you're right there in the game, I don't feel like there's a team that can't beat you.
Yeah, and
or that you can't beat.
Correct.
I said, yes.
Yeah, no, there are no teams that can beat the Bills.
Yeah.
So Ron, you kind of reinforcing your point here. Honestly, the fact that it's an NFC team doesn't hit the tiebreakers. The Bills are the 3 seed right now and would be hosting the Colts in the first week of the playoffs. I'd be fine with that. I'd be totally fine with that if that's the way that it shook out here. And that's really what we're going to be looking at, is that, stacking all those wins early, put them in this position where I want to win. I'd love to go into the bye 8-2 and to smoke both Seattle and Arizona and have the team flying high on offense and looking great and starting to find their way on defense. And then we get healthy on the bye. That would be great. The good news is they don't have to do that. And if they did drop 1 or 2 of these games, it doesn't dramatically change where they're at and what their positioning is for the rest of the season. So they control their own destiny. They're 4-0 in the division. They still have games left to be able to play the Dolphins and the Patriots. They control everything they're going to be able to do in hosting that home playoff game and getting right before that game. So I'm looking forward to it.
Right here, they're ending the season 3-0.
That like
last stretch, they're going to go into the playoffs 3-0. So no matter what they do here in the next couple, they're going to have a nice run. So I would like it to be 5-0, 6-0 going into the playoffs. But I'm saying it here first. It'll be 3-0 here at the end of the season. So yeah, go ahead, lose this one. That's okay. I just don't want to see more injuries in the process. Yeah, that's really going to be my big thing, is how healthy do we get out of these next 2 games heading into the bye? Because you said it at the top of this show that
they need a bit.
Almost feel like we're limping in to get to that, to get these guys healthy. So no more injuries, no more big injuries as we, try to steal one of these games here coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. So appreciate it, everybody. This has been a lot of fun here tonight. You guys were awesome in the chat as usual. I got a couple fun things coming up here. I'm actually going to be doing an interview tomorrow with Seahawks 3-time Pro Bowl linebacker Lofa Tatupu. So we're going to be doing a little bit of a preview. He is available to talk with us tomorrow. So you guys will see that uploaded to the feed and on our both YouTube and the podcast feed. So keep an eye out for that. Looking forward to talking with Lofa and get some of his view on the game and with a team that we don't see all that often. So that should be a lot of fun. We're also doing another giveaway. So wherever you're listening to us here, Dave and the team over at T-Shirt University giving away another gift card. We've already given away 3 of them so far. Looking to do another one here. Take a look anywhere that you can give us a rating, a review, a like, a recommendation, a star, a heart, whatever thing you're listening on Spotify, on Spreaker, on Stitcher, on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Google Play, wherever you're checking out podcasts or watching this show, give us a rating, give us a review. We're going to give away another gift card to T-Shirt University. You can go get some nice swag either locally there in Buffalo or on their website, tshirtuniversity.com. Appreciate everything there. Aaron, where can the good people find you?
You can find me on the twitter.com website. It's a social media app at Aaron Quinn 716. Just trying to engage, trying to stay away from the madness of the world and just have some fun talking Bills. And now that the trade deadline's over, I don't think there's a whole lot to fight about with Bills fans here for a while, hopefully.
Oh, they'll find something. But you guys can find me at Greg Tompsett, GregTompsett. Appreciate everything. Thank you to our sponsors, Uncle Jumbo's, T-Shirt University, West Her Auto Group. For Aaron Quinn and Greg Tompsett, you have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.